Because most of the time, when we feel in control, we think we're in control in relation to the external situation. But the law of control isn't really about the external. It's about bringing that external focus within us, where our true power really is. Hello, and welcome to The Joy Within, where we're eliminating stress and negativity, one thought at a time. I'm Kyle Greenfield, and I'll be your guide as we explore how to be calm, confident, and happy in our crazy modern world. Join us each week as we dive into some of the biggest ideas in spirituality and personal development. We'll learn what it takes to gain control of your own mind, master your mood, and navigate the many ups and downs along the way. Visit thejoywithin.org to get started so you can become the calm, confident, and happy person you truly deserve to be. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I want to talk about the law of control and how we can use it to influence the quality of our day-to-day lives. So I want to give just a little bit of background on what this is, and then I'll share these 7 keys that have helped me to unpack this idea and actually apply it to live from it as best as I can as I go about my day-to-day life. So if you've not heard of this before, the law of control is one of the mental or inner laws. Just like we have physical laws that govern the world around us, we also have consistent mental laws that govern the world within us. And just so you know, this isn't woo-woo, it's not BS, it's pretty firmly grounded in psychology and neuroscience. Often, these inner laws are hard to see, because sometimes the effects of them feel intangible, and sometimes there's a time delay that makes the cause and effect hard to spot. But they are always present, always working in the background, regardless of whether we're aware of them or not. Just like how it doesn't matter if you have a degree in physics, you still have to obey the law of gravity. But if we study gravity, when we learn how it works, we can then use it. And we can do that consciously, like how an engineer can build a rocket to escape it. Or we can do it unconsciously, like how an athlete might jump really naturally, really elegantly, intuitively mastering the movements of the body. And in just that same way, we can work with these inner laws. We can become more aware of them. We can be on the lookout for their effects in our daily lives. And we can adjust our habits to flow more naturally with them. So, at a basic level, the law of control is pretty simple. It's just the idea that how we feel is governed by the degree to which we feel in control of our circumstances. The more in control of our lives we feel, the happier we tend to be. In psychology, this is known as the locus of control theory. The challenge, and I think where this gets really interesting, is that we don't often think that we can control the aspects of our lives that we don't already think we're in control of. And I actually mean that literally. Like, we literally just don't think about this. But when we do, we tend to think something like, oh, I'm unhappy about this thing, and I can't really change that, so I'm going to stay unhappy. If I could change it, we think, I would have already done it. But the fact that this thing is still present is itself evidence that I'm not really in control of it, because obviously I would have already changed it. Now, this is really terrible logic, but we do it all the time and in different ways. So just to give you an example, we might think something like, I hate my job and there's nothing I can do about it. Now, maybe I could change my job, and that's empowering. But that doesn't change the fact that this job I hate. And we believe quite firmly that I can't change the fact that I hate this job because what I hate is intrinsic to the job. It's not about me. But if that's how you think, then this job that you hate now has power over you. And you will continue to be dragged down by it until you make a shift, until you take back control. So the law of control isn't even really about taking the action to change jobs. It's about changing how you think within the context of where you already are. I encourage you to reflect on that for a moment, because most of the time when we feel in control, we think we're in control in relation to the external situation. But the law of control isn't really about the external. It's about bringing that external focus within us, where our true power really is. And doing this is not always easy or obvious. So I thought I'd share the 7 principles, the 7 keys that have really helped me to bring that control within myself. So number 1 is to accept responsibility. And I mean absolute 100% responsibility. A lot of people talk about this, but actually doing it is incredibly humbling because we have to accept responsibility for both the good and the bad, even when it seems counterintuitive, even when it seems like it's not our fault. Because not my fault is code for out of my control. And that mindset allows the situation to control how we feel. The second principle is to acknowledge that no matter what is going on around us, we can always control our thoughts. This goes hand in hand with number one, because it means that we accept responsibility for our thoughts, even when the actual situation seems like it's out of our control. We can always control how we respond to a situation. We can always control our inner narrative, the stories that we tell ourselves. And when we can control that, we can bring even very negative situations into a more neutral or a more positive light. And as we shift that narrative, we begin to feel better about it. We begin to bring that point of focus more within ourselves. The third thing I found that really helps, and this sounds silly, I know, but it's to mind my own business. And I actually took this from Byron Katie. She has a really great articulation that there are 3 types of situations. There's my business, there's your business, and then there's God's business. My business we can control. We can control the actions that we take, the thoughts that we think. Your business are things that other people control. And we just can't control that. If someone's angry, we can't control their anger. We can only control our response to it. And then there's what she calls God's business, which are things that we just have to surrender to. It makes no sense to get caught up in them because we can only control what we can do. We can only move within some of these broader trends in which we live, which means that we can't make that business our business. We can't allow it to impact us in a negative way. Not always easy, but that's the goal. The next key is to focus on the actions that I can take, not the shoulds or the what ifs that might be around me. I've found that the more I can zero in on where I am now, what I can do now, the better I feel. Now, if you're a super logical person like I am, then this one can be really tough because I love extrapolating things. I love building out really creative plans, thinking through all the different possible options, thinking, oh, well, if I can do X, Y, and Z, then I'll be able to do this other thing. And of course, it never goes to plan. Life never goes to plan. So when life doesn't go to plan, the shoulds and the shouldn'ts kick in. Oh, that shouldn't have happened. I should have done this instead. And it throws me off center, back out of my point of control. Now, I have studied this, so I am well aware of this pattern within myself. And I find that the more I can identify that pattern, the easier it is to stay in the moment, to see very, very simply, without judgment, here I am, and to take the right next step from there. And I've found a tremendous amount of joy in doing that. Hey guys, so I don't run outside ads or get sponsors for the podcast, which means I rely on you to help keep it going. The best way you can do that is to help spread the word. Leave a 5-star review, tell your friends, share it on social. I think we all know people who are struggling, and I know issues like stress and negativity can be hard to talk about, which makes sharing a link a really easy way to connect and tell someone you care. And if you find the podcast helpful, I promise you they will too. So do me a quick favor and think of 3 people you know who would benefit from this podcast and send them a link. That's it. Now, back to the show. The 5th key I found is to always give myself 3 options. And I found this one is really empowering because it forces me to think more clearly. And I use this whenever I'm feeling down, but I also use it when I catch myself just sort of ruminating or hesitating or stuck in indecision of some sort. I just think, okay, what are 3 options? And it could be 3 options for how I want to think about something, 3 options for how to frame it, 3 options of next steps to take. You can apply it to a lot of different situations. And I think having 3 options is very important because it gives us the freedom to have a bad, a more neutral, and a better case or a better option. It also just sort of makes it okay if the first option that comes out isn't so great, because it's just one option, and we can always pick one of the other ones. Number 6, know when to walk away from a bad situation. I think often that means being able to evaluate where we are from where we actually are, without carrying forward any of the past beliefs or judgments that we might have had. And we have a tendency, and this is called the sunk cost fallacy, to overvalue past effort or past investment, and to allow the importance or the effort that we've placed on something in the past to cloud our judgment about it today. So I think probably the easiest example to understand this is investing. Imagine that you buy a stock thinking it will go up, then the company releases some bad news and the stock goes down. The problem is that we often don't want to sell that stock because we've lost money. Even if that company is no longer a good investment, the thought of selling and realizing the loss is harder than if we were to be a new investor looking at that company today, evaluating if it were a good buy or not. Deciding not to buy now is easier than deciding to sell at a loss, even though fundamentally it's the same decision. Our past clouds our judgment, and we do this all of the time with so many areas of our lives. So I think it can be a really good exercise once in a while to just step back and reflect on decisions that you might be making implicitly, but aren't necessarily serving you. If you didn't have that past investment in the decision or in the identity, how would you approach it today? If you were to look at it with fresh eyes, is it still the right choice? Or is it simply the choice you have been making, and thus you continue with it? And lastly, I think the most important key, the one that's had the biggest impact on my life in terms of working with the law of control, is I found that anytime I feel powerless, I can simply take action. Some action, literally any action. It doesn't matter what. Often, just taking some step forward can be enough to jolt you into a different state of mind. You don't have to see all of the steps laid out. You don't have to have a plan. Because as you start moving forward, the next step begins to become clearer. And then the next step after that, and then the next. And those steps just sort of stack together and shift you into a different state. Now, this is silly, but I love Disney movies, and I always have this image that I use from The Incredibles, where there's the superhero with the ice powers who skates out and he just keeps tossing out ice over the next place he wants to move. And then he tosses out some more ice and he skates on. He just keeps doing that over and over again, just skating through as he's throwing out ice right in front of him. But that's how I think of taking action in times when I don't feel in control or when I don't know what I should do. I just trust that if I just take that step, or just throw that little bit of ice out, then there will be a next step after that, and then a next after that. And there's a deep trust there that just somehow things will work out, even if I can't see how in this moment, even if I have no idea what I'm doing. It's that point of taking action that shifts my mind back into feeling in control, even if it's not justified from an external observer, even if someone else would think you're crazy. It's about how you feel in relation to it. If you can shift that back into your control, it changes the game. And for me, I find that when I can apply these 7 principles, I am more able to remain centered and in control of what I'm actually in control of, which, as I said, are my own thoughts, my own responses, my own actions. And when I first started to think in this way, I started to notice just how much leaving that point of center weighs me down. It feels heavy to move outside of the scope of where my own individual power really is. It feels heavy to try to force things to change, or to worry about what someone else might think or what might happen when I'm not in control of those outcomes. I can only control what I can control, and it's about where I place my focus in relation to that. So I hope this episode helps you start to think about this in a new way, to start to pay attention to where you are placing your own locus of control. Is it external or is it internal? And notice how that might change for different topics or different situations you might find yourself in. Notice how you feel. Notice if there's a correlation when you feel empowered because you feel in control, or when you feel depressed because you feel out of control, or angry because you feel out of control. And just try experimenting with, if I can shift that focus point, if I can bring it more within my control, how do I feel? Do I feel better when I turn the point of my control within? So, as always, thank you so much for listening. If you liked today's episode, please share it. I think that so many ideas like this are fundamentally simple, and we just need to remind ourselves of them, to reflect on them, in order to increase the level of peace, the level of joy and well-being that we feel. And I truly believe that as we do that, one by one, person by person, that starts to ripple out to create a happier and a more peaceful world. So thank you so much. Know that I love you and I appreciate you wherever you are. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to today's episode. When you're ready to take a stand against the stress and negativity in your life, head over to thejoywithin.org, sign up, and choose the path that's right for you. When you join, you'll learn a simple process to activate your natural inner joy so you can regain control and become the calm, confident, and happy person you deserve to be. Visit thejoywithin.org to get started today. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone you love, because I think we can all use a little more joy in our crazy modern world.